Yes.
Hi, I'm Sandy Dietrich from Wake Tech. I have a question about, you talked about diversifying too early. Can you talk a little bit more about what the fallout was from doing that too early in the business process?
Two things. One was it lowered our profits, because we were investing, and of course, it includes more borrowing. And so I would say, looking back, and particularly the lessons we've learned over the past couple of years, I would say that it increased debt to a way that I would not be comfortable with today. The other thing is it divides your leadership team to have to be thinking of a lot of different things. You can't say, well, today we've got this one new thing, and we're going to focus, our leadership team's going to focus on making this one new office successful, because everything else is sort of going along. Okay, well, in our case, we had situations where we had 2 or 3 new things. We might have a new office opened and have started a new service line. And so it sort of divided your thought processes a little bit, and it scattered you a little bit. And occasionally that, you can't avoid that, because we had a situation that we didn't even plan to open our Georgia office. And we had this opportunity that we could not turn away, and it was absolutely the right decision. So that wasn't in our business plan. Well, there are times like that it comes along where you say, well, we're going to suck it up and do that because we'll never get this opportunity again. But for the most part, I think that probably if you take and try to focus the best you can on one new thing at a time. Yes.
I'm Marty Kaplan. I'm with the SCORE, which is an organization
Yeah.
that advises people. We preach and preach and preach business plan. I don't think it's heard sometimes. Any advice you would give to us as counselors to emphasize why that business plan is necessary to someone who wants to go into the business?
Did y'all hear the question? All right, it's like this gentleman from SCORE said why, helping their clients understand why a business plan is so important. I honestly think people know it's important. I just think people hate to do it. And I think it's a discipline thing, because every year, I would not have done it every year when I worked for, my employer if he hadn't made me. And I dreaded it, but I felt it's like going on a diet. You dread it and you hate it, and you feel so good when you've done it. And that's the way, I think, having that feeling afterwards and realizing how confident, much more confident you feel, and seeing it work is what makes you go and do that again. But it is to me, it's a personal discipline thing more than it is a lack of recognition that it's important. I think too, some people, it's an ego thing. They think they don't need to. And both of those things, I don't think you can address. I think that's a personal discipline thing for people. But I do think if they can, I think I probably would not have done that for my business had I not been forced to do it in previous employment situations and found out how successful it could be. Any others?
What,
Oh.
you talked briefly about planning for success. Could you expand that just a little bit?
Well, again, it goes back to the whole cash flow thing, and also staffing and office size. We kept finding ourselves short on space. We would sign a lease and it would not be nearly enough. We would be overly conservative about what space we were going to need, and then you're hooked into it for 3 to 5, 7 years. We would sometimes probably, especially in the early years, way overwork our staff, and I don't think we were a sweatshop or anything, but they understood why we were doing that, and I think overtime's to be expected in a small office, but I think sometime we waited too long, and it probably might have impacted our work certainly, there's a point where you become less efficient because you've got too few people doing too many things. The cash flow, making sure you've got the bank relationships and the levels of borrowing, things like that, to be able to take advantage of the next step that your industry is going to offer to you.
Barbara, you said none of your kids were going to be engineers. What about entrepreneurs? What advice would you give them if your daughter came to you?
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm very much in favor of being an entrepreneur. I mean, once you're an entrepreneur, you're sort of ruined. I mean, it's like, I just don't believe I could do anything else now, because I love having the opportunity to make my own path. And yes, I've made mistakes. I've made big mistakes, but they're my mistakes. And so even though I hate that, it doesn't feel the same level of frustration as when you're in an organization watching people. Now again, it's probably ego on my part that I thought I knew better. We all think our way is the best way. So I'm not saying I necessarily did, but it was very frustrating to me to say, you should be doing that a different way, and not have the power and authority to do it. So I'm a big proponent of being an entrepreneur, but I'm also a big proponent of planning. And like I said in the beginning, like I had considered becoming an entrepreneur a couple of other times, and everything didn't fall into place. But I mean, you've got to really make sure, just because you're in the mood to be an entrepreneur doesn't mean it's the right time. You've got to have the right idea, you've got to have the right family situation, you've got to have funding, you've got to have the potential staffing. It's got to fall into place. And all I can say is I knew when it fell into place for me, I knew that it was there. So of our 3 children, our youngest, I believe, has that entrepreneur mentality. I'll be quite surprised if someday she isn't. And I say go for it. I mean, but now I've also known people that tried it and hated it because it's a risky thing. You've got to be the kind of person that wants that authority. You want that risk. You don't want somebody else to have it. Yeah.
What's the biggest lesson that you've learned as an entrepreneur?
Honestly, that trust is everything. That your word, the ethics, that you can have the best product in the world. You can be the smartest person in the world. You can have what everybody wants, but if you're not trustworthy, and you don't have that trust, it's worth nothing. I mean, it's like for us, even in hiring, a resume can be perfect, but if that person is somebody we don't feel is trustworthy or ethical, it's just not going to work out. So I would just say I always knew that, but I think as an entrepreneur, there's so much that you need. You need partners you can trust, and again, business partners, but also consultants, other subs, business associates. You need to be surrounded by people you can trust. I guess that's my biggest thing.